Hello and welcome to Zoology Live 2024, and this year's theme is all about animal connections. So this is the connections between animals, the nature connections between different parts of the world, and our own connections to nature. I'm live streaming right now from the Museum of Zoology's Discovery Space. Here we have on display some of the birds and habitats that you might see outside in the UK today. So we've got a few particularly local ones right behind me. Over on my left, over here we've got a display of the birds that you might see in the Botanic Garden here in Cambridge. Beautiful, beautiful sight. And we've got loads of birds in there that you might see in gardens, but also water birds, like this rather magnificent grey heron just behind me. Over on my right, here we have a local nature reserve. This is Hayley Wood, which is just outside Cambridge, and it's a nature reserve that's run by the Wildlife Trust. And we're going to be talking to the Wildlife Trust later on today in the live stream, so do get your questions ready for Josh from there for later on. But this is a local ancient woodland. It's really, really beautiful, particularly in the spring when all the bluebells are in flower. And then behind me is the building that I'm sitting in at the moment. This is our urban habitat, and here we have examples of things like starlings and crows and, of course, pigeons, but another bird that we have locally, which is swifts. And these are all the kinds of birds that we might see within our cities. So, of course, within our cities, we could see wildlife, and I particularly love going out and trying to find wildlife perhaps in some of the spaces that we'd least expect it. So here's just some of the wildlife that you might see on your doorstep here in Cambridge. So today we have not one, but two scientists for you to put your questions to. Later on, we'll be talking to Josh Helen of the Wildlife Trust all about local wildlife, the work of the Wildlife Trust to do on their reserves to protect biodiversity, and how they know that what they're doing is actually working. But first up, we're going to explore some of the wildlife from the other side of the world. We're going to the Southern Ocean and Antarctica, where right now it's pretty chilly because it's winter at the moment. In a few minutes, we will be joined live by Professor Xavier of the University of Coimbra in Portugal to talk all things Antarctic wildlife. So as you get your questions ready for him in the comments, here's a short film showing some of the Antarctic creatures we have on display in the museum. And then we'll have some stunning landscapes, seascapes and wildlife from Bird Island and the Southern Ocean, courtesy of Jose and the scientists at the British Antarctic Survey and the University of Coimbra.
rodeados mesmo por icebergs. O navio está mesmo ao pé da zona onde existe bastante gelo, porque a partir daí é que vamos a mostrar as áreas onde nós podemos conhecer mais as águas marinhas ou como é que funciona o ecossistema marinho. Mas o que é fascinante aqui é realmente a quantidade de icebergs. Já vimos pinguins e focas, ao nós estamos rodeados por eles. Faz-nos pensar realmente que este planeta é muito lindo.
And I'm now joined live by Jose from Portugal. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
So you're all primed and ready to answer our audience questions. But whilst we wait for them to come in, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into studying Antarctic zoology?
That's a very good point, because I think most of the audience must be wondering how a Portuguese is actually working with animals like penguins or seals or albatrosses in the Southern Ocean. As everything is our passion, I'm a marine biologist, so I've always been very passionate about marine biology. So when I was a kid, I loved to be very close to the ocean and the waves and the energy they have and the animals that live there. So when I've done my undergraduate in marine biology in the Algarve, can you imagine?
I can't imagine anywhere better.
And after that, one of my professors suggested to go to Cambridge, and then that's where I spent numerous years, and I'm still attached with the British Antarctic Survey. So in the last 25 years, so it's been a huge privilege, and working there and going there. I think we've been there more than 10 times to the Antarctic, and working with these amazing animals, like the images really shows, is a very special place on Earth, and you really feel passionate about it. And looking at your collections that you have in the museum, it really shows the really great examples how wildlife is amazing in the Antarctic as well.
Yeah, I'm very jealous. It's one of the places that I would love to go, because I think the wildlife just looks incredible. So, I mean, the first time you visited, I mean, it must be quite a different place. I mean, it's a bit different to the Algarve, isn't it? So, do you have any particular memories from the first time you visited? What it was like, such a different place?
The first memories, the first time was in 1999, and at that time, internet was just starting. I would just extend or exchange emails just once every day, I think, and it was really funny. So I didn't phone home at all for 4 months, so it was very different time, and it seems like yesterday. But what I really treasure about Antarctica is that it's a planet within a planet. So when I came from the UK and then went to the Falkland Islands, and then we got a ship to Bird Island, to South Georgia, and that takes us to 3 to 5 days, and it's like getting into a new world. So you have the air getting colder, your cheeks get frozen, trying to see the first icebergs and the albatrosses, and then the penguins on the water. It's just like a world to open to you. But what really impressed me is how animals are not afraid of you. If you go and you mention all the birds around us in wildlife, but they are very cautious when humans get close. In the Antarctic, my impression is exactly the opposite. They come to you to understand who you are. You are the weird one. So they are very curious. So penguins around you, the seals come and chase you, and not sure, they just want to say hi. It's a huge experience. So I think everybody that went to the Antarctic, but just looking at some of the images, you feel very passionate about it.
Yeah. Snails, snails? What am I talking about? Seals, can we just say hello? I mean, they're pretty big animals, some of the seals down there. I mean, might they be looking at you for dinner?
It's really funny, because we had one of the examples when I go to schools is once I had an Antarctic fur seal in front of me, and generally I couldn't go anywhere. I had to cross by her. and she was much bigger than I was. So I was just saying, can you move on? And they just opened one eye and didn't move. And the second time I tried, they opened their big teeth. And I thought, oh, so I had to go around like half an hour walking around the hill just to go behind her and carry on my path. So
Yeah.
it was this kind of thing. This is their world, and that's how
Yeah.
it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting to get a few questions, but I just wanted to find a little bit about your workout before we go to some questions that we're getting coming in from the audience. So you sort of we showed Bird Island, and you were talking about some of the albatrosses. What kind of work were you doing out there when you were?
So the main point of my team is to understanding how the different threats that we see in the environment, like climate change or pollution, is affecting the Southern Ocean environment. Because the animals that live there are used to the cold. So if the air is getting warmer, the currents are getting warmer, how does these animals cope with it? So one best way to understand where animals go, you can go rowing like you do in Cambridge and trying to chase penguin and albatross. So what we do today, this is quite exciting. We use these devices like tracking devices.
Yeah.
So this is called a PTT, platform terminal transmitter. So we just put on the back of the penguins with the feathers, and then while they're searching for food, we call it foraging, and then when they come back, we remove the taser tape around it and the feathers, and they carry on with their lives. But what is great, we understand exactly where they go. And this is a great way and a simple way to understand what they do.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So technology being really used to its full, going down there.
Yeah, understand where they go and where they feed and how can we protect them.
Yeah. And one thing I know that we've chatted about before, and I wondered if you might be able to share with our audience, is I know that you work on something called a colossal squid as well. And just the thought of a colossal squid, I mean, how big is it? What is it? Is it different to a giant squid? Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes, the giant squid are big. The colossal squid can be even bigger. So they come up with the name of colossal squid. The thing is that animals in the Antarctic generally can get even bigger. So like a sea spider could be, the size of your finger. In the Antarctic is the size of your hand. And for example, I study squid. So in the diet of penguins, for example, we find the tiny teeth of the squid. They're really tiny, don't worry. But now
That's
go
quite
and
small.
ask the next weekend, just ask your parents to go and get fresh squid from the supermarket and look at the teeth. And this is the teeth of a common squid that we find in Europe, and is about 10 centimeters. Okay? This is the teeth of a colossal squid. This is so this is the size of a teeth
Wow.
of a colossal squid. So it's literally the size of your hand. And by the shape of it, we understand it's a colossal squid. And if we measure some parts of it, we can extrapolate to original size and weight of the colossal squid. This one has 100 kilos and more than 1.5 meters. So this is bigger than us. So it's unbelievable. And what is fun is that we find them in the diet of numerous predators like seals, albatrosses, penguins, whales. And from that, we can analyze, and just using the beaks, do some chemical analysis, and we can understand where they live, what they eat, and how they interact with other animals. So you get a huge amount of information. And this colossal squid can get bigger than the giant squid, and it can go up to 500 kilos. So if you have the time to go to the Te Papa Museum in New Zealand, you'll find one there.
Yeah.
500 kilos of a squid that could do this. And even more interesting, this is the cool stuff. When we talk about science, we have one student, actually originally from Cambridge, Dara Farnan, is in Tenerife at the moment, looking at some of these teeth from colossal squid to age them. So we will be able to understand how these colossal squid, how old they can get, because generally a squid can go up to 1 to 2 years. So they kind of hatch from the eggs and they grow and eat, and then reproduce once and they die. For the colossal squid to get to 500 kilos in 2 years, That would be very surprising. So they can go possibly older. We will know very soon. This is how
Oh,
exciting it is, the colossal
that's
squid.
yeah, that's amazing. Excited to read about that when that gets published. So I'm going to go to some of our audience questions now because we've got them coming in. So we've got Ying Yu who says, is there a visible difference between male and female squid except for their size? So can you tell the sex of a squid?
It's a good question. It depends on the species. Generally, we don't. So how do we do that? There's some for example, from the beaks. So from the beaks, there's some squid species that their teeth are different. The males and the females have different teeth, for example.
Okay.
Some have really big teeth, others very small teeth. But generally, if you want to understand differentiate a male and a female squid, actually we have to open them. So you just open them, open wide, and look if they have testes or if they have gonads or eggs to be a female. So you have to open to look at it. That's one of the great examples. The other one that is what usually experts do is one of the arms actually is different for the male because they get the sperm to give it to the female. So actually one of the arms is actually different. It's called
Okay.
ictalized. So that's also very cool to know if a male is a female. Great question.
Okay. Yeah. So when they mate, do they produce loads and loads and loads of young then, all in one go?
Yeah, they do. They do. They can go hundreds, thousands of eggs. It depends on the species. But one thing that is interesting on cephalopods, so the squid and octopods, is they invest all their energy to produce these eggs. And after they take care of the eggs and the eggs are carry on with their lives and hatch and so on, they die. So they only reproduce once. So most of the squid that you find in the markets have 1 to 2 year olds and they just live once. So while us, for example, you know, we can have different children, can have more than, that's why we have brothers and sisters and lots of them. And so for the squid, they only reproduce once, so it's very different.
Yeah. Okay, a few more questions coming through. So I've got one question: is do giant squid and colossal squid ever interact?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
We have no evidence that actually they interact, but I think they occupy the same area. They live in the deep sea, so both they are like cousins. So usually the giant squid is more or less more into warmer waters, although they are global. The colossal squid is more related into the southern hemisphere and from the Antarctic up to subantarctic waters and possibly slightly north, but it comes more influence from the Southern Ocean. So we find them, and this is very interesting from them, is then when they are tiny, they are caught by the toothfish, these fish that can get up to more than 1 meter, and they are caught by fisheries. But when the colossal squid survives and gets bigger than the fish, they become the predator. So we find them also in the diet. It's really, really cool.
Wow.
So they switch. If they're young, you run. When you're big, you chase them.
You chase them. Fantastic. So I've got another question. This one's another interesting one. What do we know about colossal squid's ecology so far, and what do we still need to discover? So I'm guessing it's
that's a good question. We had scientifically, we had a review in 2017 and reviewed about their biology, generally how big they can get. But in terms of, for example, as I mentioned, Dara is looking at their age. We don't know their age at all. We have the way that we catch them most of the times is from the diet of their predators. So Malcolm Clark, a legend, and Paul Rodales, these great British scientists on cephalopods, they found them in buckets in the diet of whales when they were still whaling. So Malcolm Clark was still catching buckets of them when they were whaling still in the Southern Ocean. Now they are much harder. We find them literally in the diet of these toothfish. So when they get caught, we look at what they did, and that's how we get their information. We know they can reach big sizes, but exactly much about the ecology, we're looking into that now. And one of the things that also is quite new and we want to explore is how they are genetically diverse. So we don't know if if we have it in the Southern Ocean, if there are different populations around the Southern Ocean, because the Southern Ocean or Antarctica is the size of Europe. So going around it is actually can take quite a while. So we don't know if we're talking about one species that I think it's most likely, but different populations could have just different genetic information to know how adaptable they can be in the future to climate change. So we still don't know much about them at all.
Okay, fantastic. So any of our young zoologists out there, I think there's going to be stuff that you can ask questions about.
Yeah, come and help.
Yeah. So I've got a few. I'm going to ask you one that I find the most difficult question to answer, which is
No problem.
from Fraser, age 10. What is your favourite animal and why? I can never answer this one.
Me neither. It's because it's like choosing your best friends when all of them are looking at you and who is your best friend, and the thing is it's very difficult when I look at it depends on my mood. I think there's animals like, for example, I love the simplicity of a wandering albatross.
Yeah.
It's just the way they are. When they look at you, is amazing. I love how curious Antarctic fur seal is. They come and chase you, and they're like a little dog, and their pups are the most adorable things in the world. And of course, penguins are the nicest ever. Gentoo penguins are the most adorable animals in all planet. We need to work on them because they are, of course, one of the species that are coping well with climate change. But different populations can react differently. So we need to work and handle them very carefully, of course. But they are adorable. If you grab them and just put it on your lap, you can do something else, and they stay on your lap. Like, oh, this is quite nice, and they're the nicest ever. So each one of the animals are truly amazing. And don't forget, even I consider squid really nice too. So what can I
Yeah.
say? I love
It's too
marine
hard.
biology. Too hard. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I've
Fraser.
got a question from Zoe, aged 11. How many types of teeth does squid have?
What type of teeth? Well, it's one type of teeth, but they have
Okay.
two, one upper and one
Okay.
lower. So actually, that's a very good question because I only showed you the lower, and this is the upper. Okay, so this is
Yes.
the upper. So this is like your upper jaw, and this is the lower jaw. Okay, and so this is the mouth. This is the tentacles will be this way. This is the rest of the body, and this is the mouth, and they eat like that.
Okay.
So
It looks
literally the type of, this is
yeah.
made of keratin. This is like the same material as your nails. So they
Okay.
can be quite tough and can break a lot of things.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a parrot beak or something like that, doesn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah,
got that
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
shape to it.
Malcolm
Yeah.
Clark used to say that to
Oh, yeah.
explain. We say it's like a parrot beak. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. It does look like it.
So Jude and Sydney ask, at what depth are the eggs produced for each? So I'm guessing that's the giant and the colossal squid. What depth do they produce the eggs? Do we know that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that's something they need to investigate. We
Yeah.
don't know.
We don't know.
We have no clue. I don't think we ever found eggs other than stranded animals, and that would be very, very rare. So we don't know where their eggs are. I think they will be in the deep sea, but we have no evidence. I don't think they ever been caught, or if they've been caught, probably there's not much information at all that I'm aware of. So something
Okay.
that some of you to investigate.
And then, so then I got a question from Zoe Mead saying, do we know why the squid's teeth differ from males and females, or is there not really a reason?
No, there's a good point. There's some evidence on some species that probably males and females, they can live in different areas and they only meet at a certain time of the year and they will feed on different things. But generally, that doesn't apply to males and females. Usually they would eat similar things. But we do have, for example, some octopods, Antarctic octopods, they overlap in their distribution. So octopods, they live at the bottom of the sea, but they overlap in their distribution. Some very shallow, another one just slightly deeper. but their beaks, their teeth are totally different. One is very fragile and pointy and totally useless, then I think it won't be able to eat anything. The other one is like tough and strong and seems to break everything. And you look morphologically, so how they look like from the outside, they look very similar. We can't tell. Is when we look at their beak or
Yeah.
doing genetics, we can say they are different. So different teeth will tell you that they will eat differently, but
Okay.
there's a lot of overlap.
Okay. Okay. So I've got another question. How does squid have offspring? I think we kind of talked about that. So is it like producing lots of like fry? Is it?
So whatever. We have a male squid and a female squid. The male introduces sperm to the female, and then as the females release the eggs, they are injected with sperm and they get fertilized. So this is one example. So that happens in the water column, and they stay there. It can be like a huge bowl of different eggs and so on. For the cuttlefish, they actually take care of them, or the octopods under the rock, they have a lot of their eggs all together, and then suddenly the eggs say, I'm ready, and they hatch. That's how they do it. So it's really, really nice.
Yeah. And then this one's an interesting one from Aisha, asking, how do giant and colossal squids manage to ambush their prey when they're so big? Wouldn't it be easier for fish, other sea life, to detect them in the water and run away?
That's a good point. That's why they live in the deep sea.
It
Everything is
can't be
dark.
seen.
No, everything's dark. So they
Yeah.
can't. I think they just stroll in the deep sea, and I think they have a sense. And don't forget, colossal squid and squid in general, they have their eyes, their eyesight. They're quite unique. So vision can be quite important. That's one aspect. The other thing is they actually migrate. Mostly, we have evidence that they come, be in the deep sea, but then they go to shallow, less, with a lot of light waters to come and feed, and then they go to the depths again. And they do this. This vertical migration occurs literally every day. So they come to the deep sea during the day, and then during the night they go to shallow waters and feed on like small shrimps or fish, another squid, and then they go to the depths. And the reason that we think they go to the depths is to avoid being eaten by whales and seals and penguins, because they are a huge risk. But the main reason is that they want to avoid these predators, and they use a lot of the vision. That's how they get their prey.
Okay. So that answers the next question we had from Fraser, actually, which is, what is the colossal squid's primary sense? And what is the biggest that you've heard about? So is vision their main sense?
I think vision is a lot. And I think there's some chemical clues, but I'm not familiar with them. It could be because they have the sense, but they look a lot of vision. Because one of the things that probably can do in the summer is, if there's no light around on the beach, you could see the waves, and sometimes you could see the algae, and the algae actually shines. And so if you have a fish in the middle of the night just swimming in areas that we have a lot of algae, actually they become very obvious. You can actually see them. So I think squid have that strategy of eyesight could be very important to them.
Fantastic. And Theo, age 9, says a slightly different topic, asks why penguins vomit to each other to get a partner. Is that true?
They vomit to feed the chicks. I don't think to get a partner. I don't think they go very far if they vomit to the other parent, unless I never seen that. But I don't think that it happens. Usually, what might have happened, or the footage that we might have seen, was literally a parent feeding a chick. So imagine a penguin. How would a penguin transport fish? They could take it on their bill. That will be very problematic. So what they do, the best way, is to take their food inside their stomach, because it's warm and protected. So when they come near their chick, they just give the food warm and nice, just like the chick wants. That's how they do it.
Fantastic. So we've got a couple of questions I think we've answered already a little bit. One was, are there any preserved colossal squid specimens in museums? And there's one, is Te Papa in New Zealand.
Yeah, Te Papa in New
Yeah.
Zealand. There are some of them. We have some specimens or parts of them, including beaks and genetic materials of mussel at the British Antarctic Survey and also here in Coimbra. But around the world, in some experts in some universities, there are.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say definitely France, UK, us, and in Portugal and probably US. But there's a few. Any Antarctic programs, they might have some of the specimens. And actually, we're trying to do that now and look at their genetic variability around Antarctica and looking at the colossal squid. The main point is genetically, we want to understand if they have tools, so within them, the ability to cope with the change that are happening, even in the deep sea. So things are changing, getting warmer, the currents are changing, so it will affect them. So we want to understand how they will deal with it.
Okay. And Zoe is interested to know what the lifespan of a squid is. So that was a couple of years, you were saying, wasn't it?
Generally, it is. For the colossal squid and the largest squid, we don't know.
You don't know.
And there's nautilus, they can get several years. They are totally different. So they are a different group of a cephalopod. They are within cephalopods, but they have a different life strategy. But the general squid, 1 to 2 years. Everything, if you go to a market, most likely the squid that you have in your hands is 1 to 2 years maximum. And a fish of the same size, like a sardine, for example, can go up to 6 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And the same size. So they grow really, really fast.
Yeah. And another question. Are the tentacle spikes of the squid used for hunting prey, or do they use them for defense at all?
Yeah, I think they are more to attack. Because if you have a sperm whale chasing you, and we know that sperm whales eat colossal squid, they literally try. There's evidence that they could hook and trying to get rid of the sperm whale, but they have no chance. I think the hooks that you have in the arms of squid is mostly to capture prey, for sure, most of the times.
Yeah. Okay, now I do have a couple more questions for you. One is, we were talking about this a bit earlier, in that the Antarctic, I mean, it's quite different to the rest of the world, isn't it? And it's governed by the Antarctic Treaty, which I'm not sure many people will have heard about. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works and how sort of your science and the work that you do contributes to some of the work that they do?
One thing thank you, Ross. One of the key things is that you have a document that is literally a treaty. So it's like a document that several countries signs that literally says that Antarctica should be for science and for peace. And it is amazing. So we have it's 10% of the planet, something of the size of Europe, and is protected, is governed by these documents called Antarctic Treaty that says this should be for science and for peace. So that's really novel and brings now more than 50 countries together, and we meet every year at the Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings. This year was in India, and it is amazing because you create laws. So we discuss the science, what is the evidence that we have, how Antarctica is changing, what is their threats, and so on. And what we want is to work with the scientists to implement laws with policymakers to protect Antarctica. So how can we protect emperor penguins? How can we make it sustainable having tourists coming to Antarctica? How can we work in Antarctica minimizing the environmental impact when we work there, handling the penguins or using drones or the equipment that we carry? Because, for example, one of the worries today is pollution. So how can we have fishing there in a sustainable way? So all these questions is what we're trying to do at the treaty. And this treaty was signed in 1959 and enforced in 1961. So it has a lot already, 50 years on, and it's a true privilege how I have a huge amount of people, scientists, policymakers, lawyers, really interesting people that are their main aim is to protect Antarctica. So it's really, really a privilege to go there and go to these meetings.
Fantastic. So we haven't managed to get through all of the questions, but what I'll do is I will send them through to you and we'll pop them on our blog if we can get some answers to the last of those.
Of course.
I have one last thing that I would like to ask you, which is what can we do to help Antarctic wildlife? Is there anything we can do from so far away to help Antarctic wildlife?
Of course we can. I think the most simple thing that we can is what we're doing today, is to get informed. That's one key thing, is just get information to understand not only Antarctica, but our rivers, our birds, how can we protect them. It's just be informed. The other thing that's very curious is to be curious about things, be passionate about things that you want, and the thing is, we are passionate and inclined to things that we love. So if you love Antarctica and if you love your birds and you love your wildlife, you're more inclined to take some actions to protect it. And how can you protect it? Is just assess every day, what do you do every day? How can you reduce your impact in the planet? So if you live in the room and your light is on, turn it off. If you can eat an apple that was that you got just around your tree, just around Cambridge, just get those local things. But you're from Sydney, buy stuff from Australia. So if I'm in Portugal, eat sardines. The thing is, because what you eat, what you do, what we wear, how we go to school, simple things, but don't just be informed, but don't nearly get obsessed with it. Just be aware of it. But when you have a voice and you are aware of it, you'll see that little things can make a big difference. And also you're saving money to your parents too. So it's just win-win-win. And the thing is, and this is a big message that I have, is still today, there's still a lot of work to do from a scientific perspective. And we need more and more scientists, not only on the wide range of disciplines, particularly on dealing with wildlife and biodiversity. So we need you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jose. It's been really fascinating. And brilliant questions from everyone as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So we've connected with wildlife on the other side of the world. And before we go and meet our second scientist of the day, we're going to take a look at some of the ways that we can investigate the natural world around us. So first up, we're going to be doing a bit of detective work into the diet of barn owls. A few weeks ago, members of our Young Zoologists Club dissected some barn owl pellets to see what they've been eating. And amidst all the fur, we found some absolutely fabulous bones. And then we've got some members of our museum team sharing with us some tips on the wildlife, how to watch the wildlife on our doorstep, from setting up camera traps to how to bird watch and looking for mini beasts in trees and shrubs.
Members of our Young Zoologist Club have been dissecting owl pellets. These were from barn owls. Owls end up eating lots of food that they can't digest, like bones and fur. They store these in their gizzards and then regurgitate them later all at once. With a bit of detective work, you can go through these pellets and learn a lot about owls and their diet. Our young zoologists found a lot of vole skulls, and we could identify these as vole skulls because they had a specific zigzag pattern across the teeth. Mice and rats have more distinct molars, kind of like human teeth. We were also able to identify lots of different bones of the skeleton. A few of our members even found shrew skulls. Shrews are not rodents. They have spiky teeth and a long, thin skull. Almost all of these are vole skulls. Here's how to set up a camera trap. Camera traps are often attached to trees, but my one has a tripod on it, so I'm going to put it somewhere else. First, I've got to turn it on. There's normally a little switch at the bottom. Then you need to find somewhere to put it. Give it a little tap on the head. Good boy. I put mine here because I know the animals pee in this long grass here. I know the foxes definitely creep along the back fence. I think the foxes pee here as well, actually. When you're ready, just collect the camera, open it up, turn it off, and then take out the memory card. You can put this in a computer or a tablet or a phone. Here's some things that we saw before.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Hayes and I'm a research assistant at the University Museum of Zoology in Cambridge, where I mainly study insects. And today I want to show you a way you can see what mini beasts live around you in your garden or local area. And the method I'm going to be talking about is beat netting. This is a really simple, easy thing to do, and it's also a lot of fun. And you can use it to survey anything from trees through to bushes, really any greenery that rises above a metre off the ground. It's also something you can do with very little equipment. So we're going to be using a sheet here, a white sheet, but you can use a white tray, really anything that's quite pale in colour and quite wide. And having that pale colour is really good because it means if any insects or mini beasts fall into your beat net, then it's really easy to see them and to really make them obvious and stand out against that background. I've also seen a pale upturned umbrella work as a perfect beat net, so if you happen to have one of those, that's also great. What you want to do is you want to take your sheet or other makeshift beat net and place it underneath the branches of a tree or other bit of greenery that they have. And all you want to do really now is to give it a shake. And this is where the fun comes in, because you can really go for it. A lot of the insects or mini beasts in the tree or greenery will hold on pretty tight, so you really do want to give it a good shake. So literally, just give it a good shake like this, and you'll see that the sheet is collecting a lot of other stuff as well, but it's also going to be collecting mini beasts. What you can also do is, if you want to, alternatively, you can use a stick to hit the branches, beat the tree, which is where the term beat net comes from. And I can already see that there's a few flies, spiders, and other little creepy crawlies walking around here. So over here we can see actually there's some spiders and things. And that was literally from just a few seconds, as you saw, of me using a beat net. Oh, what have we got here as well? Potentially a little beetle as well. That was just a few seconds here, and it's been quite a drizzly, wet and dreary day. So if you did this for a longer amount of time on a bright sunny day, then you would get lots and lots of different things as well. If you want to learn more about the species that you found, I would suggest getting your own mini beast ID guide, or there's lots of free guides online too, and just get out there and see what species live around you. Have fun, guys.
Here are all the things you need to go bird watching. Nothing. You don't need anything. You could get a book. Any book will do. They're all really useful. But you don't have to get one. You could get some binoculars They're also really useful, but you don't have to. You could even get a camera, but you do not need to get a camera. Binoculars can be really useful. Let's say you see a little brown bird. With the binoculars you can zoom in close, and yeah, I think that's a female sparrow. I can check using one of the books. The camera is also pretty useful, because if you see a bird, you can zoom in close on it and then try to get a photo that you can identify later. I think that's a male sparrow. Let's get a photo and then check in one of the books. You can also use apps. This app records the sound of the birds that are nearby. Ooh, a pigeon. Here's what you need to wear. Wear whatever is comfortable. Anything that is safe and comfortable and suitable for the weather that you're in. It does not matter. And before long, you'll be seeing so many cool birds for yourself.
So in just a couple of minutes, we'll be meeting our second scientist of the day, Josh Helen, who works for the Wildlife Trust. He works on the science and monitoring of the Trust's nature reserves. And to get a feel for these fantastic spaces, the museum team took a trip to our local nature reserve here, which is Trumpington Meadows. It's just a couple of miles away from the museum. So while you're getting your questions ready for Josh in the comments on YouTube, here's a little film of some of the wildlife that we saw there. Oh, a lovely little mindful moment there, I think, with that trip to Trumpington. And now I'm joined by Josh. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Ros. Thanks for inviting me along.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you brilliantly. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. So just to say to everybody who's watching, do pop your questions into the chat into the comments on YouTube. And whilst we're waiting for some of those questions to come through, Josh, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about how you got into wildlife conservation.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in nature and wildlife, and from a really young age, I was the one always buying these sort of spotter's guides and out trying to find things under rocks. Particularly interested in bugs, and pond dipping particularly was an interest for me. And I took that into a career. I went to university, studied marine biology actually, and then moved to a job at the Environment Agency, and then I've to where I am now at the Wildlife Trust for Beds, Carrington, Northants.
Fantastic. So you're our second marine biologist of the day, because our last scientist also trained in that, and it's great.
Technically, yeah, a bit too far from the sea these days. We don't. Yeah.
It's not very local, the seaside, to here. I mean, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the work that you do for the Wildlife Trust as well.
Yeah, so I lead the monitoring research team, which our job basically is to monitor what's going on our nature reserves. So find out how the habitats and species are, how they're reacting to how we're managing the nature reserves, how things are changing over time. So, whether we've got the plant species we'd expect to be there, whether our kind of mammal populations, reptiles, amphibians, anything really that's living on that nature reserve, we're keeping an eye on and checking that basically the Wildlife Trust is looking after them in the right way. Yeah,
because I think I used to think that surely the way to support biodiversity is to let just everything go wild, but that's not really the case, is it? What kind of management do you have to do on reserves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a big believer that there's room for all approaches in conservation. So there is room for the rewilding approach, and we do have areas that we call low intervention or almost no intervention, where we let nature do its thing really. But a lot of our probably the majority of our nature reserves, they do involve a lot of practical management, and that's because a lot of these landscapes we think of as natural have been created by human activity over the years. So wildflower meadows have been created by grazing and hay cuts over hundreds, thousands of years. Same with ancient woodlands. They've been managed in a way that creates the kind of diversity that we see through things like coppicing and clearing of woodland rides and things. So we try to emulate that, these kind of ancient techniques really through our conservation, and that's what keeps the diversity of species that you see at these sites. And it's, I think people don't always realise what's going on under the surface there to keep them looking how they do.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of questions that have come in from the audience already. So Jessica Scott asks, I don't think I've seen any reptiles in the UK. Is it possible to find any this summer? And if so, where?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are, but I'd say anywhere in Cambridgeshire, you've got a pretty good chance by a lot of the main rivers. Early in the morning, you might see a grass snake. So, I mean, you can see them swimming across rivers and drains. But also, if you get out reasonably early in the morning, on a nice warm day, you might see lizards, like common lizard. It's quite a common sighting. Maybe basking out quite often on bridges, bits of wood, fence posts and things like that. Numerous sites really. Very good chance of seeing one at Woodwalton Fen, which is one of our nature reserves. And yeah, I mean, those two are very common. Adders much less likely in our area. But, some people don't want to see an adder.
I'd love to see an adder. But I mean, I have to say that the only time I've ever seen grass snakes, they've been swimming. Is that because they spend a lot of time in the water? Or is it just that they're easier to spot when they're not surrounded by vegetation?
No, they are almost an aquatic species, really.
Okay.
They spend a huge amount of their time in the water and feeding in the water as well. So it's feeding on amphibians and fish and whatever they can catch there. But you can, obviously, when we survey for them, you'll find them out underneath. We put out mats that people might have seen that you used to survey for reptiles, and they will sleep or rest under those. And so you go early in the morning, lift up a tile, and you can monitor them in that way.
Okay. We're getting quite a lot of questions now. So I've got one saying, I'm an avid novice birder. However, I really struggle to see any owls. Do you have any tips on places to spot owls, do you think? I mean, I guess it's time as well. Time of day is going to be important.
I should put my hands up and say I'm not a birder by any stretch of the imagination,
yes.
but I'm enthusiastic amateur in that way, I'd say. But I mean, obviously, barn owls hunting in the early evening across a lot of the fields in Cambridgeshire. So if you're lucky, you may see them from the car if you're driving out sort of around the fenland and farmland areas. Short-eared owls, which are one of our summer visitors that you get they fly in the day as well, and they're not particularly shy of people. So if you can find a location that has short-eared owls, like the Great Fen, which is one of our big sort of big, not rewilding project, but sort of restoring Fenland. We get short-eared owls there every year, and a lot of the big wetland sites as well. You'll see them. Two you're most likely to see, to be honest.
I mean, I have to say, I've seen barn owls hovering over Grantchester Meadows, which was quite exciting. Sort of doing the hovering before they went to catch their prey. It was, I got very excited. The other people around me didn't know why I was so excited by it.
I mean, they're incredible and completely silent amazing. As well. Which, I mean, you don't believe how silent they are until you see one come past. No warning, no wing flaps.
So Fraser, age 10, asks, what's the rarest animal you've seen yourself? Have you seen anything particularly rare? Or anything exciting?
I suppose it might, for me, because I've always been interested in beetles particularly from a young age, and seeing the tansy beetle at Woodbottom Fen actually. It's only found in 2 locations in the UK, and it's quite likely that the Woodbottom Fen population is slightly different to the population found in York as well. So maybe a subspecies. So very rare. One location, and a very nice, big, round, green, shiny beetle. That's quite a charismatic thing to see. So.
I was going to say. I was going to ask if they were the sort of the wonderful green ones. I've seen them in books. I've never seen one live.
Yeah, amazing, sort of iridescent. A lot of beetles have that kind of sheen to them where you turn them and you've probably got some in the specimens behind you, but where the light refracts off and they look amazing. Jewels, really.
We've got quite a few people asking questions now. So Ying, you've said that you're not really a birder, but do you have a favourite type of bird? This is, I think, largely because we had this sort of question with the last person as well. Nice comparison.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit obvious. Probably the raptors, and I think watching short-eared owls is hunting again is one of the most impressive things I've seen. So it would be that whole group of.
So here's a really interesting one given the work that you're doing. So what are the biggest changes you've observed in the habitats you work on since working in these nature reserves? Have you seen any really big changes happening?
I suppose by the nature of our reserves, we try to maintain them at the sort of condition they're at. There's been big changes at the Great Fen because I started my career over there, and we've on that whole project we've gone from basically onion fields and potato fields to really amazing areas of grassland, and then slowly re-wetting those until they're turning into fenland habitat. So that's where you see the most dramatic change, because you add water, you start to see such huge changes in the landscape. And yeah, I would say that's probably I mean, from a slightly more negative point of view, ash dieback, you might be aware of, a little bit like Dutch elm disease, has really is wiping out ash trees in this country, and to see woods that were previously like dominated by ash, and it's almost all gone, or on its way. It dramatically changes the woodland. So we're doing a lot of research into seeing what's going to happen there and what's going to replace the ash over time.
Yeah, no, it's really sad seeing these trees getting affected in that way. I remember Dutch elm disease when I was a kid, and how much that affected everything. Yeah. I mean, have you seen any impacts? Because I don't know, we seem to have had some very extreme and very changeable weather over the last few years. And in fact, that a couple of summers ago, it hit over 40 degrees C in Cambridge, which was too hot for me. Is that affecting the wildlife in your reserves as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's too hot for most wildlife in the UK. So it's describing us as wildlife as well. I mean, up to a certain point, it seems particularly good for invertebrates and butterflies, and they do like the warm weather. It makes them much more active. The research we've actually been doing with the Department of Zoology at Cambridge and the insect ecology group has been into the effects of climate change and increased temperatures on butterflies and other invertebrates. And what we found during that 40-degree heat wave is up to a point of 35, a little bit higher, things were doing very well. And then when it got to 40 degrees, nothing, they just cowered and went into the shade and couldn't fly, couldn't feed, couldn't reproduce, do all the things that butterflies want to do. So long periods of that kind of temperature, certain species just haven't got the capacity to regulate their temperatures, so they just have to hide basically until it's gone. So we don't know what the long-term effects of that will be yet, but it's something we're already considering and thinking, how do we manage our nature reserves, create more shade, and give these things somewhere to go if temperatures do continue to go up.
Yeah, hopefully it's a bit of a one-off and it's not going to be something that repeats too often. I couldn't cope with that. No. So Owly Fisher asks, what is the most exciting animal that has visited a nature reserve you've worked on? So have you had any particularly exciting visitors?
I'm trying to think if we've had anything particularly strange. I mean, we will be having beavers visiting soon, and moving into our nature reserve at Rushton Lakes, which is nature reserve sort of adjacent to the shopping centre, and then we have the nature reserve and a visitor centre and things like that in Northampton. We're introducing beavers at that site within the next year. I'm not sure of the date exactly, but
that's really exciting. Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I love beavers. I think they're great. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Probably exciting site for me is seeing common crane, which obviously were extinct in this country and have been making a comeback, and to go out now and have a fairly good chance of seeing a common crane when you're out sort of around views washes and that sort of area is heartening to see, I suppose. Something making a comeback.
Oh, it's really nice hearing the positive stories. We hear so much of the negative, but we do have some things that are working.
Otters particularly are a brilliant success story, and it's all they needed was a bit of chance to recover by themselves, really, and they've done incredibly well. So it's good to see.
Yeah. So Naturetastic with Henry, age 10, asks, what's your favourite part of your job?
No, Henry, because he does a lot of work for us. Actually, he's a brilliant volunteer for one of our young volunteers. So, best part of my job, I would say. I mean, I love doing surveys for wildlife. It's just like I like being out. I love being out on nature reserves, seeing new species all the time. So yeah, every year I add a few more species to my list of, I'll see a new plant when I'm out, or I'll see something new. And the other thing is, when you're out on a nature reserve, meeting people who say how much this nature reserve means to them, and makes it feel like it's worth what we're doing. That these places are so important to people, and they go there every day, and have been for years. So it's makes it all feel worth it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And Zoe Mead asks, what are the most diverse habitats that you survey, and why?
It's probably our wetland sites. The reason being, you get lots of kind of transitional habitats. So you will get lots of different wetland bits. So you'll get your ponds, rivers, little temporary pools. Then you'll get sort of damp grassland. You'll get swamp, reed areas, and then you might get nice bits of dry grassland. So in one site, in quite a small area, somewhere like Flitwick, and woodland as well, wet woodland. So somewhere like Flitwick Moor in Bedfordshire, or again Woodward Fen, numerous wetland sites. That's my real interest area. But you can get so many habitats in quite a small area, really, and huge amount of diversity of species.
Yeah, no, it's I feel very lucky to be in an area with so much potential wildlife. We've had another question from Naturetastic with Henry. He says, I help with the vantage point surveys at the Great Fen. How do you use all the data that's collected?
I don't actually do the work over at the Great Fen these days. So Henry over at the Great Fen, who's the monitoring officer there, might be better placed to say. But they put out regular reports of all that data that are on our website, on the I think at the blog section of our website, and basically that data is used to direct all of the management that goes on the site. And the Great Fen's an incredibly complicated project and very experimental project where we're sort of learning all the time, and we need as much data as we can. Ooh. Is Roz gone? Roz is.
Oh, sorry about that.
Your video's still frozen, Roz.
Yeah, I'm just give me a moment. Okay, huge apologies for that. I'm just... having a few technical issues here today, but sorry about that. Hopefully it should be back up and running as before. So I just have... and apologies to anybody who's watching as well if there's been a bit of a funny time. It's just my computer decided to do something a little bit funny then, and I think I was probably putting quite a funny face, so I apologise for that as well. But Josh, I was wondering, I've just got a couple more questions, and we'll see if there's anybody else in the audience has any more questions too. But one thing that we like to ask is there anything that we can do in our own green spaces to make them more wildlife friendly? So I always like to see if there's anything we can do for wildlife. Do you have any top tips?
Yeah, I mean, you've probably heard it before, but be less tidy, which is quite a nice thing to hear, actually.
Yeah.
It can mean less work, but if you're however big your garden is or the space you've got, make sure you leave some piles of wood and you leave some weeds uncut, that kind of thing. There's obviously the no mow May, which is really just a way of encouraging us to mow less often. Probably the big one, if you've got room, make a pond, and the amount of diversity you can introduce to a garden with a nice wildlife pond doesn't have, it can be the size of a sink bucket, and you'd be amazed how much you get in there, and you can do a bit of pond dipping as well. So it's a double win there, really, for that one.
Yeah. Yes, pond dipping is one of my favourite things to do. I'm just always amazed at what looks like there's nothing on the surface, and then you look at the water and there's just so much living in there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we run a training course, part of our wildlife training workshops, or our program of training courses. You can find on our website. We run one called Pond Dipping for Grown-Ups because we realised there's a niche there. Everybody loved doing it when they were kids, but you don't get the chance as a grown-up unless you're taking somebody else out. So it's that's always incredibly popular, that one.
Oh, I'll try and book onto one of those. Any opportunity is great. And can you tell us about any other ways that people might like to get involved? Any of the campaigns that you've got coming up at the Wildlife Trust? Anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a particularly exciting one at the moment. We've just launched an appeal for a site called Strawberry Hill, which is a nature reserve that we have just started managing in the last year, just over a year now. And it's, I mean, you were talking about rewilding earlier. It's a piece of farmland that's been left for, I believe, 25 to 30 years, just for nature to do what it does. And it has changed to this amazing landscape of sort of scrub and grassland, and it's currently full of nightingales as well, and we have around, I think, between 20 and 30 breeding pairs of nightingales on site, so very good chance of hearing them during breeding season, but generally really exciting site, and we're trying to raise some money. We're trying to raise the remaining money to buy the rest of the site and secure it for future generations. Really, really important on that. Probably the other big thing I mentioned, the training workshops. That's one way you can come along to the Wildlife Trust and learn from various experts on. There's a huge range of topics, of conservation topics, really, from species identification workshops to how to manage grasslands and things like that, to even like really practical things like charcoal making and hedge laying. So really good courses. I really recommend those. And if you're interested in coming to volunteer, there's loads of opportunities. In my team, there's opportunities to come and help with monitoring work and help with things like bat surveys, dormouse surveys, but there's opportunities all across the Wildlife Trust to help with everything from education to work in the office, helping us there, and to real practical work, out on reserves, chopping scrub and all that kind of stuff through the winter particularly. So yeah.
Okay, so loads and loads that we can do and get involved with. Thank you so much. That's been really, really interesting. We've got another couple of questions that I'll probably just email and see if you can answer them. We can pop the answers on our blog. But thank you for all those questions. They've been really, really fascinating. And thank you for spending time with us today, Josh. That has been really great. And I've added a couple of nature reserves I want to go and visit to my list. So I'll definitely go and see those. So thank you so much.
That's great. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for all the interesting questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you. So that's nearly it for the zoology live stream for this year, but the festival itself has only just begun. You can join us here in the museum on Saturday for loads of wildlife fun. We have walks to local green spaces, a chance to study our local mini beasts in detail using microscopes, find out about the nature supported by the David Attenborough building that we're sitting in at the moment. And you can help us to build a giant network of recycled paper chains showing our connections to nature in the museum galleries as well. For a full programme of activities, you can have a look at our blog, so museumofzoologyblog.com. Just click through where you see the big picture of the barn owl, and you can find a programme for Saturday's activities. All the activities are free, lots of them are drop-in, and even for the bookable activities like walks and tours, we do have spaces that can be booked in person on the day. So if it looks like it's fully booked online, there'll be spaces on the day available as well. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Jose and to Josh and to everyone else involved in the live stream today, and a big thank you to all of you as well for your fantastic questions. We have just one last little film to share with you on the connections between nature and us, and we hope to see you at the museum very soon. And until then, happy wildlife watching.